Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today we need to have a chat about Surging Sparks and about why I think it's going to be, and I do believe this sincerely, the best Scarlet and Violet set we've had so far. Maybe you can look at some of the mini sets and say, well, hang on a second, they're pretty cool as well. You're probably right, incidentally. But I think that of all, this is going to be Scarlet and Violet 7. The 7th main Scarlet and Violet set. And I think this is going to be the best one yet. Now, when we look at Sword and Shield is actually pretty easy. Evolving Skies. I don't think that's a controversial pick. Evolving Skies was the best Sword and Shield set, but it had all of the Altar Evolutions, which were a very big deal, and then it built in like Rayquaza, and it was just a redonkulous set. And yeah, that set's never going to be beaten. It gave us the Moonbryon, for instance, which was, the big card. It was a very big deal. I'm not saying Surging Sparks is going to be on the level of Evolving Skies, because honestly, I don't think it is. I think it's going to be a good set. I think it's going to be better than any Scarlet and Violet set we've had so far. But I don't think it's going to be on the level of an Evolving Skies. Will we get anything on the level of an Evolving Skies in the Scarlet and Violet block? Don't know. Honestly. And we haven't even seen all of Surging Sparks. I just want to get in here nice and early, tell you guys what a ridiculous set it's going to be, and then I can boast when it turns out I was right. And I'm very confident about this. Or you can all send me mocking tweets when I was wrong, but just try to be nice about it, yeah? But if I'm wrong, feel free to send me tweets telling me I'm wrong. Just be nice. And then send me tweets when I'm right as well. And then we can all be friends. Cool. Now, of course, Surging Sparks is made up of 2 Japanese sets. Paradise Dragona, of which we know everything, and Super Electric Breaker, of which we don't. And I did actually show you a video yesterday where I showed you all the EXs we knew from Surging Sparks so far, and I explained about Super Electric Breaker and the fact that we've seen a bunch of the big cards from the set, but we haven't seen everything. But we have seen Pikachu. Now, there's 2 important things to note about this Pikachu. Firstly, any set with a fancy Pikachu is going to be a very big deal. Secondly, this Pikachu looks legit. It's got an ability whereby if it's got full HP and would be KO'd from an attack, you get a 10 HP instead. It can't be one-shot by damage, which is absurd. And yes, it does have to be knocked out by damage. So, for instance, Roaring Moon comes along. Roaring Moon would be able to one-hit KO very, very easily. Because it's not doing damage, it's getting an automatic KO, and that's a different thing. So Pikachu stops being KO'd from damage, but it doesn't stop automatic KOs or things along those lines, 2-hit KOs or any of that. But the majority of the time, not all the time, but the majority of the time, that's what your opponent's going to want to do. They're going to want to come along with big attacks with stuff like Raging Bolt, etc. Go and get these big one-hit KOs, and you're going to be like, nah, mate, that doesn't work. So I think it's going to be good. And here's the thing, right? We had a Pikachu set back in the Sword and Shield era, but it wasn't the same. I personally think this Pikachu has a lot more potential than that one ever did. 120, but going up to 270, but you got to discard all the energy. It was never seemed to be enough. Whereas this one, you still got to discard all the energy, but 300 on a basic Pokemon that can't be one-hit KO'd, I'm telling you, it's going to be good. And the thing is, the best we had from that Pikachu V Max was the Rainbow Rare version. And who really liked Rainbow Rares? But this, we've already seen the full art, which is way better than the Rainbow Rare was. But we haven't seen the Special Illustration Rare. No, we haven't had it announced that there's going to be a Special Illustration Rare. Yes, I guess it's technically possible that we won't get a Special Illustration Rare. No, I don't believe for a second that that's true. Of course we're getting a Special Illustration Rare. So we're going to have the Pikachu, and that alone is going to be big. And in terms of a value proposition, no question here. No question whatsoever. This is going to blow everything else out of the water. Because in terms of supporter card, we're going to have Lizia. Now, the number 1 supporter card that we've had so far would be back in Paldea Evolved, the 2nd Scarlet and Violet set, when we had I&O. I expect Lizia to outpace I&O. I&O has been the big one so far. I expect Lizia to outpace this. Now, there's a chance it falls slightly below and I&O remains number one. But judging from what's been happening in Japan, etc., when the price of everything, in supporter-wise has been coming down quite significantly, the fact that Lizia's where it is honestly quite ridiculous. It's like 3 times Lacey. And Lacey was the biggest card in what we now have as Stellar Crown. And this is 3 times that. And sure, for some reason, which I don't really understand because it doesn't make any sense, we do have the Greninja from Twilight Masquerade, which I still contend doesn't really make any sense. There's no reason this card should be as high as it is. And it's not that high in Japan, so it doesn't really make any sense. I'm not buying it, honestly. I don't think it's legit. I think it's way too high. But regardless, does anyone honestly think Pikachu isn't going to end up higher than that? Because it is. I feel very confident it is. So value-wise, if we only look at the Pikachu and the Lizia, I do think this one's going to end up being a fair bit higher. I think it's dumb to only look at Lizia and Pikachu, but if we only look at those two, I still think we are top. But outside of that, we've got things like the Latias Special Illustration Rare. Bearing in mind that's got a really, really nice ability, which gives free retreat to all of your basic Pokemon. And then we've got the Paired Illustration Rare with Latios, which just makes the card cooler and more sought after. And right now, over in Japan, if we have a look at the price of the Latios, for instance, or Latias, I should say, the EX, that's actually pretty much dead in line. In fact, right now it's exactly in line with Lacey. So Latias, which should be a distant third at worst, is there tied with Lacey, which in Japan was the biggest, but in English we're actually replacing it with Terrapagos. But again, I don't expect Terrapagos to be as big as Latias, let alone Pikachu. And value-wise, if you're looking for a value proposition, if we just look at those 3, I think we're winning by a mile. But honestly, I think there's probably going to be a couple others in Super Electric Breaker which are going to go and make a difference as well. And again, we've got some cool stuff in Paradise Dragona. It's largely Lizia and Latias, but there's some other cool ones in there as well. So from a value proposition, this already seems like it's going to jump to be the best set in Scarlet and Violet without really breaking a sweat. But what about everything else? And again, I've already seen enough. Like, if we have a look at Paradise Dragona, for instance, which was half of the set, we already know that Latias is a redonkulously playable card. We already know that Arch Aladon is a top-level deck. It's got an ability which lets you attach 2 energy from your discard to your metal Pokemon when you evolve into it, which essentially turns it into a single energy attack, and then it does 220 and has no weakness next turn, so it's 300 HP, no weakness, hits for 220. Already a really good deck. And we know that these Ceruledge and Sylveon decks are going to be part of Surging Sparks, and we already know that Ceruledge is a top-level deck, and I'm not saying the best deck in the format, but I am saying a very good high-level deck. It's basically got an attack which, for a single energy, does 30 damage, and then 20 more for each energy in your discard, adds up very, very quickly, is a really, really good card. I love this. And the thing is, I don't think this is going to be it. Again, we have not seen a bunch of the cards from Surging Sparks. We've seen Paradise Dragona and a few headliners from Super Electric Breaker. There is plenty of movement still to be made. There are plenty of things that could still be coming in. And if we look at the top decks in the format right now, they tend to all be coming around from different places. Like, if we use a meta breakdown from just before the Tokyo Champions League that just happened, shout out to Pokecard Book for this, if we have a look at the cards, and we see Ceruledge there as a tier 3 deck, 3% of the meta, not the biggest deck out there, but pretty decent. If we just look at the Scarlet and Violet era cards there, we've got Raging Bolt, which originally came around in Temporal Forces. We've got Charizard that originally came around in Obsidian Flames. We've got Dragapult, which came around in... I'm using the English sets here because that's obviously we're talking about English sets, which came around in Twilight Masquerade. We've got Gardevoir that came around in Scarlet and Violet Base. And we've got Roaring Moon that came around in Paradox Rift. We've not had 2 big decks from one set yet. Now, initially, it looks like Surging Sparks is going to give us the Rule Edge and that's going to be it. But again, we've not seen Super Electric Breaker actually come around into the metagame. And when it does, I think we might see things a little bit differently. If Pikachu ends up being good, there's 2. Archaladon, again, could end up being a player, and if it is, we might already have 2. From a playability standpoint, the set looks ridiculous. From a value standpoint, it's already shown us enough to tell us it's probably going to be the biggest deck in the metagame. And, you know, playability-wise, you're pretty much competing with Scarlet and Violet Base at this stage, which gave us both Gardevoir and Miraidon. Like with the current metagame over in Japan, which is what we're going to be moving into fairly soon, that's essentially what we've got. Like, that is the only set really around that's given us 2 proper metagame decks from Scarlet and Violet. At least let's cut it off at 2% of the meta. So I'm kind of feeling good about Surging Sparks. I think it's going to be the best Scarlet and Violet set, and I can't tell you anything about the last 4. Generally speaking, we have 12 main sets per block, so this is 8. We've still got 9, 10, 11, 12 to go. One of those could absolutely beat it, but we know nothing about those sets. Maybe there's an Eevee set coming, I don't know. But there might be. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the 8 sets up to and including Surging Sparks, and right now I have seen nothing to suggest that this is not going to be the best set that we've had in the Scarlet and Violet era, and I think that's rather exciting, but maybe that's just me. For now, I want to know your thoughts. I want to know if you think this is going to be as good as I think it's going to be. I want to know your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions. I want to know which of the 7 sets we've had so far you consider to be the best. Go nuts in the comment section, but be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. And get shout-outs on the channel like the lovely Ashley Munns, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now and seems to be a very lovely person. So shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.